Hello humans, it's your host Corey, and this week we're going to talk about stability. Now, I'm wearing my headset. I was checking to see what I looked like. I'm wearing my headset because there's a lot going on in my house right now. We have guests here, the dogs are running around. It's not my dog, but the other dog that's here visiting. My wife is Hope. She's trying to do things. The laundry's going. And so I was hoping it would help me focus and to get a little better audio quality. And so hopefully they're not too distracting. I really only wear these when I have guests and I'm doing interviews because it helps me hear them better. So it feels a little silly doing it for myself because I'm just hearing myself in here. But I was hoping that it would get us lasered in. And so the topic for today is stability, and this came from a question that I was having during a conversation with someone. So I have a friend right now who's really struggling with a sense of stability in her life. And so when we were talking, I realized by listening to her that she wasn't really talking about internal stability, she was talking about external stability. Now, external stability is things like your job or having a great relationship or having financial security or these things in our lives that make us feel okay, that make us feel safe. And so I really started to think about what is the difference between external stability and internal stability, and why might we benefit from focusing more on building internal stability? Because the fact is that external stability is really hard to pin down. I mean, yes, you can do everything right. You can get the good job. You can marry someone, have kids. What are these things you're supposed to do to make yourself feel really safe and secure? And the bottom line is that things still happen, right? So someone you love could betray you, or you could get divorced, or someone you love could die, even in the best case scenario, right? We grow old with our person, and then our person passes, and then our life is never the same again. And so things like that, or you lose your job, or your financial situation changes, or somebody gets sick. So there are these near constant attacks to our external stability. So we work so hard to get everything in place, but then something happens. And that makes us feel constantly unsteady, constantly unsafe, like maybe all of our hard work isn't amounting to anything, that we could lose it at any time. And I think that really adds to the stress and feeling like, what is it all for? What am I doing all this for? If I can't even feel safe, why am I working so hard to feel safe and secure in my life if everything I do doesn't amount to anything? And what I realized when I was listening to my friend and I kind of had this insight was that what we're actually looking for, what we're actually trying to achieve in our day-to-day lives is internal stability, because we can't make the world act the way we want it to. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could just make the world do what we thought it should? But no, we can't get the world to behave. And so what we can do is get our internal world stable so that anytime something external happens that is debilitating or destabilizing, that we can prevent it from unmooring us or making us feel like we're not going to be okay, or we're not going to get out of this alive. And I mean, we're not going to get out of this alive. Sorry to say that. No matter what happens, that's not going to be the result here. But though I do hear about these people who are trying to live forever. What's that name of that one guy who's taking all the pills and he's got the perfect regime and whole teams trying to extend his life forever? Sounds exhausting. I'm exhausted just listening to it. But most of us are going to die. And the goal is not to exit the world having had no troubles or everything is perfect till the day you die. It's more the objective being that whatever happens, you're going to be okay. You're going to feel safe and secure and loved and cared for and protected no matter what's going on in your life. And that is created by internal stability. So if external stability is our job, our relationships, money, our house, things that we created in order to feel like we have a stable life, and all of those things are mostly out of our control, then what is internal stability? How do we make it? What does it look like? How do we maintain it? How do we make sure that it's not threatened so that it can continue to provide us with that stable safety and self-assurance, even if the external circumstances suddenly change on us. If you think of internal stability as having this really calm, stable, grounded mindset, like you're connected to your center. We hear that sometimes in martial arts or some of these other contexts where they're like, connect to your center, go inward, meditate, breathe, connect to your center. When it's like that part inside. What does that mean to have a very solid core, a very stable center? It means that you have calmness in your mind. It means that you're very resilient. You don't have excessive anxiety or worries. Everything in here is good. Out here, not so much, but in here, good. And so internal stability is created by many of the things that we've explored in the 4 pillars, because for those of you, maybe this is your first episode, mostly what I talk about in the show is the 4 pillars of being a well cared for human. Pillar 1 is your relationship with your body. Pillar 2 is your relationship with your mind and emotions. Pillar 3 is your relationship to spirit. Spirit is a lot of things to many different people, but it's that sense of creativity, awe. So if you are experiencing joy, play, if you're a spiritual person, if you have meaningful work or purpose, all of that falls under spirit. And then your 4th pillar is connection, how you relate to other people, but also how you feel about connection, meaning do you feel vulnerable enough to put yourself out there, to be seen by others, to be appreciated for who you are. And so these 4 aspects together create the system of you having a great relationship with yourself. And so if you're having a great relationship with yourself, that naturally produces internal stability. That relationship is your rock, your internal stable rock. And so the objective of investing in your 4 pillars and making sure you have a really great relationship with these 4 aspects of yourself will naturally produce internal stability. So let's look at them one by one. So your relationship with your body, if you're taking good care of your body, which is within your control, right? External stability are the things we can't control, whether or not we keep our job, whether or not everyone we love stays alive and healthy, whether or not we, have to deal with any unforeseen circumstances. What we can control are the things that we do to our bodies. So do we feed it well? Do we rest well? Do we get enough exercise and sunlight? How are we talking to our bodies? Do we criticize them? Do we treat them like a problem rather than this great gift that we have, even if we have a very challenging body? For example, I've talked a lot about my chronic pain issues, and so sometimes I get really mad at my body, but that affects my relationship with my body, right? And so I have to be very mindful of that and work to not let that get out of control or blown out of proportion. And so even if you have a challenging body, do you have this good relationship with it? So doing things for your body that keeps it healthy, that keeps it feeling loved and cared for, that gives it all the resources it needs to perform well, these are investments that create internal stability. Now for the next pillar, the mind and emotions pillar, that is your connection to your feelings and your thoughts. And again, if this is your very first episode, the reason why I put mind and emotions together is because they're so deeply intertwined. So when you're having a really terrible thought cycle, like if you're really struggling with something and you're just going over and over in your mind about it, it's creating these terrible feelings. Or if you have terrible feelings, what I like to jokingly call free-floating anxiety. So like I don't know where it's coming from. I'm just suddenly very anxious and I can't really attach it to anything. That free-floating energy, stress, that will create feelings like, oh my God, did I forget to do this? Is it this? And so your thoughts and your feelings are deeply entwined. And because they're deeply entwined, I treat them as such. They are coupled for life. And so I put them together in a single pillar. So when we're talking about investing in that pillar to create internal stability, when we're trying to make our thoughts and feelings be the best they can, which I'm laughing because we all know how hard this is, but to invest in them in such a way that creates internal stability, we're looking at practices like meditation or breath work. We're talking about psychotherapy or anything that helps us to figure out what's going on in here. Do we have any patterns that need to be broken? If we're looking at things like managing our anxiety, managing our stress, learning about different kinds of thought patterns like catastrophizing things or all or nothing thinking or any of these aspects that view world through a certain lens and kind of expect the worst, negative thinking, negative bias, all of that has to be addressed. If you've got any repressed emotions or things that haven't been processed, all of that work, any of the mental and emotional work that we would do, we're creating internal stability. So that if something happens, and I think particularly with this pillar, if something happens in the external world that destabilizes us, I think we feel it here first. And I shouldn't say that because it's probably not true for everybody, but I feel like my mind or my feelings are the first thing that freaks out if something happens. I either think something or I react emotionally. And so this is kind of our frontline defense against external instability, right? And so the more stable your mind is, the more stable your emotions are. If something happens that destabilizes your external world, your mind is prepared because it's stable, it's solid. Imagine it like a giant fortress wall. If that giant wall is in place, something hits the outside of it, you don't overreact inside, right? You can pull yourself together. You can go, ooh, but then you're like, okay, well, wait. This is how I'm going to handle this. It doesn't take you over. Whereas if you were really unstable, inside, and something external, hits you like a rock, like an asteroid, more likely. And if that wasn't in place, if you don't have any of these abilities or strengths that you've been honing over time, you're more likely to be very reactive. At least that was true for me in the past. So like a lot of people who grow up in traumatic circumstances, highly reactive. That was me, highly reactive. We don't think before we react to something terrible that's happened. In the past, it was because we didn't have that luxury. If you're in a highly volatile situation as a child and everyone around you is not well and they'll go from fine to screaming or threatening to hit you or throw something at you in 0.00 seconds, there is no time to think about how you would like to react to that. Like, that's just not possible. And so many of us grew up in these very violent, for lack of a better word, volatile is the word I was looking for, situations in which us having the strength or the capacity to decide how we respond is just not on the table. It's not something that can happen. And so it's difficult to comprehend as an adult when you do have more power, you do have more control over your space, who you will and won't interact with, who you will or won't let into your life, that you can now build that space, right? You can build that fortress wall and protect yourself in those ways. And that's kind of what the contribution of the mind and emotion pillars gives to our inner stability. The more we build up that aspect of ourselves, having a meditative practice or having practice non-reactivity or working on regulating our emotions, self-regulation of our nervous system, any of that kind of dips into the body a little bit when we start talking about the nervous system. But any of that regulatory stuff, what we're building is that outer wall that helps to protect our internal stability from destabilizing external events. Now, the third pillar, the spirit pillar, how does that create internal stability? Well, anytime we can be playful, we can be joyful, we can connect to our spirit, our purpose, a higher kind of view of the world and what's going on, and that the spiritual lens, we'll call it, that's also going to help us feel stable because we'll have something to go back to when we don't understand what's going on. A lot of anxiety stems from uncertainty, right? And maybe I should do a whole episode on this, but the uncertainty of we don't know what's happening and we don't know what's going to happen. And so it creates this amplification of our fears and our minds run off with it and everything starts to get, really upsetting. But if you had a sense of spirituality, for example, and this doesn't have to be true for anybody, but if you just had a good sense that this is part of a plan, and I say that, but I mean, we really shouldn't rely on, there's a plan, this has got to be a reason for this. But if you just had a feeling that everything was going to work out, let's keep it that way. If everything was going to work out, if you knew that things have a tendency to work out, if you had faith in that, or you had trust in that, everything's going to be fine, then you'd be less likely to be destabilized by external events. Because you'd be able to connect with that strong spirit aspect of yourself and be like, everything usually works out for my highest good. I'm going to be fine. this is going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. Said in like a panicky, tremulous voice, right? Everything's going to be okay. But this idea that relying on a larger lens, a greater scope, a bigger POV to help stabilize you internally. Also, any time that we use creativity to stabilize ourselves internally, that always helps. So for example, if something confusing or scary or frightening is happening and we use our creativity to contextualize or process that experience, that provides stability. It also just feels good to be creative. It feels good to play. It feels good to have joy. And so these things can also inoculate us. So if things are really great and something happens, it feels more like a minor inconvenience than the end of the world, right? And so these aspects of the spirit pillar also make us feel fortified. And also when we're in the face of adversity, if we're connected to something like purpose, so if you like, I know that this is my purpose for being here, I know this is my purpose for being alive, and you come up against a challenge that would put most people off, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? It would feel much smaller if you were like, well, my purpose is to do this, so I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get past this and get to the other side of it because this is what I'm here to do. This isn't going to stop me. And so that's another thing that kind of creates this internal stability, this determination. And so the spirit pillar, again, it's hard to fully define the spirit pillar because it has so many different aspects to it, but it has many ways to create internal stability. Anything that's helping you to connect with this experience of being human, your reason for being here, what you believe in, and helping you to maintain that higher point of view so that you don't get like stuck down in the details, which is really what's making us feel unstable. It's like we get down here and we look at everything falling apart and we're like, oh my God. So spirit helps us to zoom out and to get out of the muck and to kind of see it from a bigger lens. And then your last pillar, the connection pillar. This one's a little harder to explain because it's somewhat connected to external factors, right? So when I say your connections to others can create internal stability. So if you have great relationships, you have great friendships, you feel loved as a person, and something happens, you can draw on that, right? And you still feel pretty stable and solid inside, even though something challenging has happened. If something has happened to your external support, I can see how it would affect the sense of internal stability, right? And so I know that that's not perfectly crystal clear, but just imagine that if you have great relationships, and we know this from the data as well. So there's a lot of research and data coming out now that the people who live the longest are actually the people who have great relationships. So if you have a really healthy marriage, or you have really great friends, you have a big friend group or a decent friend group as you're getting older, that is more likely to extend your life than anything else. And so that sense of safety in your community, having the support of the people around you, that also creates that internal stability, because no matter what happens on the outside, if you get sick, for example, you know you have people that you can count on that'll take good care of you, who love you, who are going to fight for you. And so these 4 pillars all together can create the internal stability. And so I guess what I would like to say, and what I said to my friend as well, is this idea that we should spend as much energy and focus time as we can on building the 4 pillars. We can't control what happens in the world. And I say that to myself every time I open the news lately. And so the world is super challenging, and there are a lot of things happening in the news right now that are horrifying. And we could get really overwhelmed by that, and we could feel like everything's falling apart and we're not going to be okay, nothing's going to be okay. And instead of being overwhelmed by that, I think it would really help us to focus on building that internal stability so that we're stronger, we're more resilient against the external circumstances, that we can focus more on what needs to be done, that we can not get lost in our big thoughts and feelings in the face of catastrophe. And we do that by investing in these 4 pillars, and investing in our relationship with our body, with our mind and emotions, that spirit, that creativity, joy, meaning, purpose, and our connection with others. Building that will help us feel more centered, more whole, more protected when we're navigating the landscape of uncertainty, which is known as life, because life rarely goes exactly how we would like it to. At least not in my life. It has not been doing everything I would like it to be doing on my schedule. And so the more that I invest in that relationship with myself, the more I invest in those pillars, the more internally stable I feel. And that's really what I think I'm looking for in life, because I can't possibly make the world shape up to the way I want it to. So I think that's the best use of our time. If we're looking to feel more stable, if we're looking to feel more together, more safe and protected, it's really about investing in yourself and creating that internal stability that you need in order to withstand the external chaos. And that's it for today, dear humans. As always, I hope you found the episode useful. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and for listening, or if you're on YouTube, for watching this. If you have any feedback, if you want to leave a comment, or you want to ask a question that I'll cover in a future episode, please do that. I love hearing from you guys. Otherwise, I will be back next time with another episode of A Well Cared For Human. And until then, please take good care of you. This episode of A Well Cared For Human was written and produced by me, Corey Marie. The music was by Late Night Feeler and Esther Abrami. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider visiting my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get early ad-free access to the episodes, as well as a monthly patrons-only Q&A, bonus videos, and more. Not to mention that your Patreon support lets me know that you find value in the show and want it to continue. You can find me on Patreon by visiting www.patreon.com/Corey Marie. If you can't support the show financially, that is okay. You can still subscribe to the show, leave a review of the show, and recommend the show to your friends, not just the neurotic ones. All of this helps so much. And as always, thank you for listening.